History books love kings, generals, empires, and men with dramatic portraits. Cute. But sometimes the real plot twist had paws, wings, hooves, fleas, tusks, or a terrifying ability to reproduce faster than a government can react. Today, we're counting 33 animals that actually changed history, from war pigs and heroic pigeons to one monkey bite that helped wreck a country's future. 1. In the ancient world, war elephants were basically tanks with opinions. They could smash lines, terrify horses, and make infantry question every career decision that led them to standing in front of a charging animal the size of a moving wall. So, naturally, humans looked for an even weirder counterweapon: pigs. Ancient writers describe armies using squealing pigs, and in some accounts even flaming pigs, to panic elephants. The idea was brutally simple. Elephants hated the shrieking noise, panicked, and sometimes turned back into their own troops, which is not ideal unless your battle plan was surprise self-destruction. It is one of those tactics that sounds like a drunk campfire dare, but it reveals something real about ancient warfare. Psychology mattered. Sometimes victory came not from sharper swords, but from knowing that the enemy's superweapon had one ridiculous emotional weakness. 2. The sacred geese of Rome are one of the most gloriously embarrassing security stories in ancient history. According to Roman legend, when Gauls tried to climb the Capitoline hill at night, the human guards somehow failed to notice. Very professional. Excellent work, gentlemen. But the geese, kept sacred to the goddess Juno, heard the intruders and started honking like tiny feathered alarm systems with personal issues. Their noise woke the Romans, who rushed to defend the hill and supposedly save the city from disaster. Whether the story is polished by patriotic Roman storytelling or not, the message stuck for centuries. Rome, the future empire of roads, legions, aqueducts, and dramatic statues, was once saved by birds who had absolutely no chill. It is a perfect historical reminder that sometimes civilization survives because one animal wakes up angry and decides to make it everyone's problem. 3. In 1920, Greece lost a king because of a monkey bite. That sounds like the setup to a fake history meme, but it happened. King Alexander of Greece was bitten after trying to break up a fight involving a monkey. The wound became infected, and he died soon after. His death created a political crisis at exactly the worst possible time. Greece was already tangled in war and post-World War I power struggles, especially with Turkey. Alexander's death helped bring his father, King Constantine, back into power, which then affected Greece's alliances and political direction. Winston Churchill later famously suggested that 250,000 people died because of that monkey bite. That number is dramatic, but the point is brutal. History does not always turn on speeches, treaties, or genius strategy. Sometimes it turns on one angry animal with teeth and horrifying timing. 4. Bees have been used in war because apparently humans looked at nature's most organized flying rage machine and said, "Can we throw that at someone?" Across history, defenders used hives and swarms as weapons, especially during sieges. If enemies were climbing walls, attacking gates, or moving through narrow spaces, a smashed hive could transform discipline into chaos in seconds. Soldiers trained for swords and arrows, not for thousands of furious insects entering their helmets like unpaid auditors from hell. Ancient and medieval sources describe bee-based defenses, and even if some accounts are exaggerated, the logic is very real. Bees create panic, break formations, and make people run without waiting for orders. It is a tiny but perfect example of biological warfare before anyone had a fancy name for it. Forget elite cavalry. Sometimes the strongest unit on the battlefield was a wooden box full of buzzing violence. 5. Laika was the Soviet dog sent into orbit aboard Sputnik II in 1957, and her story is impossible to tell without feeling the weight of it. She became the first living creature to orbit Earth, turning into a symbol of the early space race and the extreme pressure between the Soviet Union and the United States. Scientifically, her mission showed that a living body could survive launch and weightlessness, at least for a time. Politically, it was a massive propaganda victory. But personally, it was tragic. Laika was sent on a mission with no plan to bring her home. That detail still hits hard because it shows how ruthless the race for prestige could be. Before humans reached orbit, before astronauts became global celebrities, a stray dog from Moscow was placed at the front line of space history and paid the price for humanity's ambition. 6. Wojtek was a Syrian brown bear adopted by Polish soldiers during World War II. And yes, this is the point where history starts sounding like someone lost control of a military comedy script. But Wojtek was real. He lived with the Polish Second Corps, learned soldier habits, and became so integrated into the unit that he was officially enlisted because military bureaucracy apparently needed the bear to have paperwork. During the Italian campaign, especially around Monte Cassino, Wojtek reportedly helped carry crates of ammunition. Imagine being exhausted in a war zone, looking to your side, and seeing an actual bear doing logistics better than half the supply chain. His image later became part of the unit's emblem, turning him into a symbol of endurance, absurdity, and the strange emotional bonds of wartime. Wojtek proves that war is terrible, but also occasionally so strange that reality starts freelancing. 7. Rats, fleas, and the bacterium behind plague helped create one of the most devastating turning points in world history: the Black Death. In the 14th century, plague spread through trade routes, ports, towns, and crowded communities, killing millions across Europe, Asia, and North Africa. The old popular image is simple. Rats carried fleas, fleas bit humans, and catastrophe followed. Modern research adds more complexity, but rats and fleas remain central to how many outbreaks were understood and transmitted. The consequences were enormous. Labor shortages shook feudal systems. Wages changed. Religious anxiety exploded. Trust in authorities weakened. Entire villages disappeared. Europe did not simply recover like someone rebooting a laptop. Society was permanently altered. Tiny creatures moving through ships, grain stores, and streets helped trigger a demographic earthquake. It is terrifying proof that history can be reshaped by organisms people barely notice until everything collapses. 8. Cher Ami was a carrier pigeon in the First World War, and his mission became one of the most famous animal stories in American military history. In 1918, during the Meuse-Argonne offensive, a group of American soldiers known as the Lost Battalion was trapped and being hit by friendly artillery fire. Radio communication failed. Runners could not get through. So the message went out by pigeon. Cher Ami was shot, badly wounded, and still managed to return with the note that helped stop the shelling. The bird arrived with a terrible wound, but the message was delivered. That small act helped save surviving soldiers who were already trapped in a nightmare. It is almost absurd in the most emotional way. Generals, maps, artillery, and chains of command were all failing, and then a wounded pigeon became the communication system that actually worked. 9. Tyke was a circus elephant whose escape in Honolulu in 1994 became one of the most shocking public incidents involving a performing animal. During a show, she killed her trainer, injured others, broke out of the arena, and ran through city streets before being shot by police. It was chaotic, horrifying, and widely broadcast, which meant millions of people saw the glittery illusion of animal entertainment collapse in real time. Tyke's story became a major example in debates about keeping wild animals in circuses. It forced people to look past the costumes, spotlights, and cheerful posters and ask what life was actually like for animals trained to perform under pressure. This was not just an elephant went wild. It was a public reckoning. One tragic escape made the cruelty and danger of the system harder to ignore, especially for audiences who had never questioned it before. 10. The silkworm is one of history's smallest economic superstars. This little caterpillar produces the silk thread that helped shape ancient China's wealth, diplomacy, secrecy, and global trade. For centuries, silk production was guarded so fiercely that it was basically the luxury fabric version of a state secret. Silk was not just clothing. It was money, status, tribute, diplomacy, and soft power wrapped into one shiny material. Demand for it helped fuel the trade networks later called the Silk Roads, connecting China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. And the whole thing depended on an insect that does not look remotely important: That is the beauty of it. No claws, no fangs, no battlefield drama. Just a worm eating mulberry leaves and quietly powering international commerce. The silkworm changed history not by terrifying people, but by making them desperately want expensive fabric. 11. Ham. The chimpanzee flew into space before the first American human spaceflight, and his mission helped prove that a living primate could function during launch, weightlessness, and re-entry. In 1961, Ham rode a Mercury capsule on a suborbital flight, performing simple trained tasks while scientists monitored him. This mattered because the United States was trying to catch up in the space race, and nobody wanted to discover, with a human astronaut on board, that spaceflight turned basic coordination into soup. Ham survived, and his mission helped clear the path for Alan Shepard's flight soon afterward. But like many animal space stories, it is both impressive and uncomfortable. A chimpanzee became part test pilot, part research subject, part public relations symbol. Humanity's road to the stars included a primate pressing levers in a tiny capsule, which is both heroic and deeply strange. 12. Ancient Egyptian cats were not just pets. They were wrapped in religion, symbolism, domestic life, and royal imagery. Cats were connected to protection, fertility, and the goddess Bastet, and harming them could carry serious social and religious weight. This is where one of history's most famous animal war legends enters the room. Ancient sources claim that when the Persians fought Egypt, they exploited Egyptian reverence for cats and other sacred animals, possibly by placing them in front of their forces or painting them on shields. The details are debated, and the story may be exaggerated, but the larger point is fascinating. Belief can shape battlefield behavior. If your enemy understands your sacred symbols, they may turn them into psychological weapons. Imagine losing military confidence because the opposing army figured out your spiritual pressure points. That is not just warfare. That is weaponized cultural homework. 13. Balto became famous because of the 1925 serum run to Nome, Alaska, when diphtheria threatened the remote town and medicine had to be delivered across brutal winter conditions. Planes were not reliable enough, ships were blocked by ice, and roads were basically a fantasy. So teams of sled dogs carried the antitoxin across hundreds of miles in a relay through snow, darkness, and lethal cold. Balto led the final team into Nome, and the public turned him into the symbol of the entire mission. The story is more complicated because many dogs and mushers, especially Togo and his team, carried some of the hardest stretches. But Balto's fame mattered. He became a national icon of endurance and rescue. In a moment when modern logistics failed, survival came down to dogs, ice, and humans trusting animals to do what machines could not. 14. The dodo became the celebrity mascot of extinction, which is a very sad career path for a bird. Native to Mauritius, the dodo evolved without major land predators, so when humans arrived with ships, hunting, habitat destruction, rats, pigs, and other introduced animals, the bird had no good defense against the chaos package. By the late 17th century, it was gone. The dodo did not change history by building empires or winning battles. It changed history by becoming a warning. Its disappearance showed how quickly human expansion could erase a species, especially on islands where ecosystems are delicate and animals are not prepared for invasive predators. For centuries, people even treated the dodo like a joke, slow, stupid, doomed. But the real stupidity was not the birds. It was the human ability to destroy something unique, then act surprised afterward. 15. Hannibal's war elephants became one of the most unforgettable images in ancient military history. During the Second Punic War, Hannibal led an army from Carthaginian Spain across the Alps into Italy, bringing elephants with him as psychological weapons. The march itself was brutal, and most of the animals did not survive long. But the image of elephants crossing mountains to attack Rome became legendary because it was so bold, so strange, and so deeply inconvenient for everyone involved. For Roman soldiers, elephants were terrifying. They were huge, loud, unfamiliar, and capable of smashing formations just by existing with momentum. Even when their practical battlefield value was limited, their psychological effect was enormous. Hannibal understood drama before television existed. He did not just invade Italy. He brought walking nightmares through the mountains and told Rome, without words, that normal rules had been cancelled. 16. Alex the African gray parrot helped change the way scientists and the public thought about animal intelligence. Working with researcher Irene Pepperberg, Alex demonstrated abilities involving colors, shapes, numbers, materials, and categories. He was not just repeating sounds like a feathery audio recorder with a superiority complex. His responses suggested that birds could understand concepts in ways many people had dismissed. This was a major blow to the old human habit of assuming intelligence belongs mostly to creatures that look like us, or at least have the decency to not eat seeds. Alex showed that a bird brain could be far more sophisticated than the insult bird brain suggests. His work influenced research into cognition, communication, and consciousness in animals. One gray parrot forced humans to admit that maybe the intelligence club was never as exclusive as we kept pretending. 17. Mosquitoes may be the unofficial winners of more wars than many famous generals. They do not wear uniforms, give speeches, or get dramatic statues in city squares, but diseases carried by mosquitoes, especially malaria and yellow fever, have wrecked armies, halted campaigns, and shaped empires. In tropical and subtropical regions, soldiers often died from disease in numbers that dwarfed battlefield losses. European colonial plans, military expeditions, and settlement schemes were repeatedly limited by mosquito-borne illness. The tiny insect became a strategic force. You could have ships, cannons, uniforms, flags, and a very confident officer with a feathered hat, and still lose because your army was being eaten alive by fever. That is the humbling part. Humans like to narrate history through kings and generals, but sometimes the real power was a flying needle with a disease portfolio and no respect for ambition. 18. Sergeant Stubby was a stray dog who became one of the most famous American animals of the First World War. He was adopted by soldiers, smuggled overseas, and ended up serving near the front lines in France. Stubby reportedly warned troops about gas attacks, helped locate wounded soldiers, and even played a role in capturing a German soldier. Over time, he became a decorated mascot and a symbol of courage, loyalty, and survival under horrific conditions. The story has a charming surface. Little dog, big war, heroic legend. But underneath it is something deeper. Soldiers in the trenches lived with fear, mud, gas, noise, and loss. An animal like Stubby was not just useful. He was emotional oxygen. He reminded men that life still had warmth in a place designed to erase it. History remembered him because he represented resilience with 4 legs and a suspiciously heroic face. 19. Dolly the sheep arrived in 1996 and instantly made the future feel uncomfortably close. She was the first mammal successfully cloned from an adult cell, which meant scientists had taken genetic material from a mature animal and created a living copy. That achievement was enormous. It changed biology, genetics, reproductive science, and public debate almost overnight. Suddenly, everyone had opinions about cloning, including people who had never willingly read a science article in their lives. Was this a medical breakthrough? A moral crisis? The opening scene of a very expensive disaster movie? Dolly became the face of all those questions. Her existence forced governments, scientists, religious leaders, and the public to talk about bioethics in a new way. One sheep did not just enter a laboratory record. She walked straight into humanity's anxiety folder and made herself impossible to ignore. 20. The camel changed history by making deserts negotiable. Without camels, many long-distance trade routes across the Sahara, Arabia, and Central Asia would have been slower, riskier, or simply impossible. Camels can carry heavy loads, endure heat, conserve water, and move through environments where horses look at the landscape and mentally resign. This transformed trade. Salt, gold, spices, textiles, ideas, religions, and political influence moved along caravan routes that depended on camel power. Cities grew wealthy because caravans could cross harsh spaces and connect distant economies. The camel was not glamorous in the royal portrait sense, but it was infrastructure with eyelashes. Entire states benefited from the movement it made possible. When we talk about trade networks, we often imagine merchants, coins, and maps. But a huge part of that history was walking on padded feet, chewing calmly, and carrying civilization across sand. 21. Cairo was the United States Navy SEAL dog who took part in the 2011 operation that killed Osama bin Laden. He was a Belgian Malinois, a breed often used in elite military work because of speed, discipline, intelligence, and the ability to make a grown adult reconsider every life choice in under 3 seconds. Cairo's role was not as a mascot. Military working dogs can detect explosives, track people, patrol dangerous spaces, and move where humans are at greater risk. His presence in such a high-profile mission showed the world how advanced and serious military dog programs had become. After the operation, Cairo became famous almost instantly. Not because he gave interviews, obviously, but because people suddenly realized that even the most secretive modern missions can include a highly trained dog as part of the team. History had gone high-tech, and the dog still mattered. 22. Rabbits in Australia are one of the greatest "what could possibly go wrong" stories in environmental history. In the 19th century, European rabbits were introduced for hunting, which already sounds like the first sentence of an ecological disaster report. With few natural controls and ideal conditions, they multiplied at a ridiculous pace. Soon, they were eating crops, stripping vegetation, worsening erosion, and damaging ecosystems across massive areas. Australia tried fences, hunting, poisons, diseases, and enough desperate management strategies to fill a national regret museum. The rabbit problem showed how dangerous introduced species can be when humans move animals into environments that did not evolve with them. These were not villain rabbits plotting empire. They were just doing rabbit math, which is apparently terrifying. One imported animal became a continental-scale lesson in arrogance, ecology, and the magical human ability to underestimate reproduction. 23. Sergeant Reckless was a Mongolian mare who served with the United States Marine Corps during the Korean War, and her record sounds almost unreal. She carried ammunition to the front lines, often over steep terrain and under fire, then brought wounded soldiers back. During the Battle of Outpost Vegas in 1953, she made repeated trips through dangerous conditions, sometimes without a handler. That detail is what makes her story so extraordinary. She learned the route and kept going. While humans were pinned down, exhausted, and surrounded by chaos, this horse continued doing the job. Marines later honored her with promotions and deep affection because she was not decoration. She was a working member of the unit. Sergeant Reckless changed history on a human scale, not by shifting borders, but by helping men survive a brutal battle. Sometimes heroism arrives carrying shells and eating from a feed bucket. 24. The tsetse fly had a massive influence on African history because it spreads trypanosomiasis, a disease dangerous to both humans and livestock. That shaped where people could settle, where cattle could thrive, and how economies developed. In many regions, the tsetse fly made large-scale horse and cattle use difficult or deadly, which affected farming, transport, warfare, and state power. It also complicated European colonial expansion because invading officials could bring maps, guns, and confidence, but their animals could still collapse in fly-infested zones. The tsetse fly did not draw borders with a pen, but it helped create invisible limits across landscapes. It influenced trade routes, settlement patterns, and military possibilities. Imagine a tiny insect looking at empires and saying, "Not here, gentlemen." That is the scale of its impact. Small body, enormous historical veto power. 25. Monte was the sheep sent up in a hot air balloon by the Montgolfier brothers in 1783, along with a duck and a rooster, because apparently early aviation began as a barnyard group project. The flight happened before humans went up, and the goal was simple: find out whether living creatures could survive rising into the sky. Remember, this was a time when people did not fully understand what would happen at altitude. Would the air be deadly? Would bodies fail? Would the entire idea of flight be one giant aristocratic mistake with a balloon attached? Montaciel and the other animals survived the short flight, helping prove that human ballooning might be possible. Soon after, people flew too. One sheep became part of the first cautious steps into aviation history, back when humanity tested the heavens by politely launching livestock. 26. The horse may be one of the most history-changing animals ever, because it transformed speed. Before engines, the horse gave humans faster travel, stronger armies, longer communication networks, and the ability to control larger territories. Steppe peoples used horses to move with terrifying mobility. Empires relied on cavalry, couriers, messengers, and supply systems. Trade expanded. Conquests accelerated. News moved faster than a walking human could manage without collapsing into a dramatic pile. From Mongol horse archers to Persian royal roads to medieval knights, horses helped decide who could project power and how far that power could reach. They did not just carry people, they carried strategy, administration, wealth, and war. Without horses, human history would still move, but it would move slower, smaller, and with far less dramatic charging. The horse was basically the ancient world's speed upgrade, with hooves and attitude. 27. Keiko, the orca, who starred in Free Willy, became far more than a movie animal. The film made audiences emotionally connect with the idea of a captive whale returning to freedom, and then people looked at the real Keiko and asked an uncomfortable question. Wait, why is the whale from the Freedom movie still in captivity? That public pressure helped launch a major campaign to move him from a poor facility in Mexico to better care, then eventually to Icelandic waters. The effort cost millions, involved scientists, activists, trainers, and intense debate. Keiko's full release story was complicated, and not everyone agreed on what success meant. But his impact is undeniable. He changed how many people viewed captive marine mammals. Pop culture turned one orca into a global ethics argument, proving that sometimes a movie star with fins can shove a whole industry under the spotlight. 28. Seaman, the Newfoundland dog on the Lewis and Clark expedition, deserves more credit than he usually gets. When Americans tell the story of that journey, they often focus on maps, rivers, diplomacy, wilderness, and heroic human endurance. Fair enough. But Seaman was there too. And he was not just decorative frontier fluff. He helped with hunting, guarded the camp, warned the party, and became part of daily survival on a dangerous journey across unfamiliar terrain. A large working dog was valuable in a world of wild animals, uncertain food supplies, and constant risk. Seaman's presence also humanizes the expedition. It reminds us that history was not only made by leaders standing dramatically beside rivers. It was also made through ordinary routines, finding food, staying alert, keeping warm, and trusting a dog to notice trouble before the humans did. National legend had a tale. 29. Martha, the last known passenger pigeon, died at the Cincinnati Zoo in 1914. Her death became one of the most powerful symbols in American conservation history. Passenger pigeons had once existed in staggering numbers, darkening skies in huge flocks. Then mass hunting, habitat destruction, and commercial slaughter wiped them out with shocking speed. Martha's life was the final sentence of that story. One bird, alone, representing a species that had once seemed too abundant to disappear. That is what made her so important. She turned extinction from an abstract idea into a named individual people could mourn. Her death helped strengthen public awareness that wildlife could not survive unlimited exploitation just because humans found it profitable or convenient. Martha became a warning with feathers. Abundance is not immortality, and nature does not owe humanity endless second chances. 30. The turkey had one of the strangest international careers in food history. Native to the Americas, it entered global trade after European contact and quickly confused almost everyone. In English, it became turkey, partly because of trade associations with Turkish merchants and imported guinea fowl. In other languages, the bird's name often points in completely different directions, including India or Peru, because apparently the world saw one large bird and collectively failed geography. But the turkey's impact was real. It became part of European agriculture, holiday traditions, banquets, and national food symbolism, especially in North America. A bird from the Americas traveled into global cuisine and identity, carrying with it the messy history of exploration, colonization, trade, and cultural exchange. The turkey did not conquer the world with elegance. It waddled into history wearing a name tag filled out by confused merchants. 31. Chips was a United States military dog during World War II, and his most famous moment came during the Allied invasion of Sicily in 1943. When American troops were pinned down by an enemy machine gun position, Chips broke free, charged into the gun emplacement, and helped force the soldiers inside to surrender. He was wounded in action but survived, instantly becoming the kind of war story that sounds like Hollywood added too much drama. But Chips was real. He served as a sentry dog, helped guard troops, and became a symbol of the role military dogs played in modern warfare. His medals were later caught in controversy because official rules did not allow animals to receive certain military decorations, which is very human. The dog charges a machine gun, and bureaucracy says, "Interesting, but let us check the policy." Chips earned his legend anyway. 32. Cecil the lion was killed in Zimbabwe in 2015, and the reaction became a global storm. He lived in and around Hwanga National Park and was well known to researchers and visitors. When an American trophy hunter killed him, the story spread worldwide, triggering outrage over trophy hunting, conservation law, wealth privilege, and the value people place on famous wild animals versus anonymous ones. Cecil became a symbol because he had a name, a face, and a story people could emotionally understand. That is uncomfortable, but true. Millions suddenly cared about hunting policy because one lion became recognizable. His death pushed governments, airlines, conservation groups, and the public into debates about permits, protected areas, and the ethics of killing wildlife for sport. Cecil did not change history by living peacefully, as he should have. He changed it because his death forced the world to look. 33. The laboratory mouse may be one of the most influential animals in modern science. It does not look powerful. It looks like it might steal a crumb and panic under a cabinet. But mice have shaped medicine, genetics, immunology, cancer research, neuroscience, drug testing, and biology on a massive scale. Scientists use them because they reproduce quickly, share many genes with humans, and can be studied across generations. Countless treatments and discoveries pass through mouse research before reaching people. That makes the lab mouse both scientifically essential and ethically complicated. It has helped extend human life, reveal how diseases work, and unlock genetic tools that transformed research. Kings get monuments, generals get paintings. The mouse gets a cage, a data sheet, and almost no public applause. Yet modern medicine would look completely different without this tiny animal carrying an enormous scientific burden. So now be honest, which animal did we criminally leave out? Not humans, don't be that guy. I mean a real animal that changed history harder than some crowned man with a sword and an ego problem. Drop the one we missed in the comments, and if your pick is better than ours, the comment section gets to judge. Like the video, subscribe, and let's keep proving that history is way weirder when animals start touching the timeline.